you have a Yukon, Tahoe, or Escalade that sounds like a barking seal when you open the door? This is the video for you. All right, so what's going on here? Well, this truck has a power running board, and that's operated by an electric motor and a gearbox. And inside of the gearbox, we have plastic gears that eventually strip out or break. And when that happens, it starts making the terrible seal noise that you just heard. So the only fix here is to replace the entire unit. And we'll put the part number on the screen. This unit you can buy directly from GM. It's about $800. You can also find them online, the GM ones, for $500 to $600. Or you can do what we did and buy the absolute cheapest Chinese one on Amazon for about $150. So let's install it and see how it works. All right, so we are under the driver's side of the car. This is a look at the motor as well as the running board mount. We're going to start by unplugging the motor. So we have a large plug here right at the back of the motor. It's held in with a push pin to this plastic tray. The new motor did come with a new plug and new push pins. So we're going to go ahead and pry this one off so that we can access the plug a little bit better to get it unplugged. There we go. So here is a look at the plug. There is a red tab that you need to slide forward. So I've already got that slid forward. You'll need to push down in this tab that's revealed when you slide that red part forward, and then we should be able to unplug this. It's pretty tight working in here, so I'll go ahead and try to get this unplugged and show you what it looks like when we're done. All right, so there we go. Next up, we're going to unbolt the running board from the assembly itself. And there's two bolts. They're a 5mm hex that hold this running board on. On the front side of the arm, there are two T25 bolts that hold the wiring harness. I'm going to go ahead and remove those next. Yep, that one broke off. All right, so we got the push pin out, both bolts removed. We're going to leave one bolt there that broke, so we'll have to replace that when we go back on, but the wiring harness is now loose. Okay, so with the wire loose and the two bolts off of the bottom of the running board, you can lift the running board off of the mount. We did have to take the rubber mallet to the bottom of the running board here to persuade it to come off of the mount, but there's nothing else holding it on at this point. So our running board is now loose from the mount. Next up, there are two 4mm bolts. One is located right here at the front of the arm, and then one is located right behind the arm. It looks the same. We can only see the front one because of where the camera is positioned. It's pretty tight quarters here, so I'm going to use a 4mm bit and a 1/4 inch wrench to go ahead and remove this bolt. One bolt, and here's a look at the rear bolt. So we'll do the same thing. Next up, we're going to remove the three main mounting bolts holding the assembly onto the truck. We have one here, which is a 10mm nut, one up here on top, and then one just on the back side here where we can't quite see it. So we'll get started here in the front. I should also mention this top nut. The mount itself has a slot for the top nut, so you only need to loosen the top nut. We don't need to remove it all the way. So the last stud that we can't quite see at the back of the mount does have a wire loom stud on it. So this is pushed onto the stud to hold the wiring in place. So you will have to pull this off before you can access the nut. There we go. One more nut. So at this point we have the running board supported on a few blocks of wood. We should be able to pull this entire assembly down. I have not unplugged this last wire yet because it's up on top of the motor and pretty hard to reach. So let's pull this down. There we go. All right, so we have our entire assembly down. Here is that last connector that was up on top of the motor that we couldn't see. Here's the wire loom, the stud push that was on that last bolt that was really, really hard to reach. So to remove this last wire connector, we pulled the red tab out. We'll then put some pressure on this tab right here where my thumb is, and then we should be able to pull the connector out. There we go. And so now the entire assembly is removed from the truck and we're ready to put in the new one. We are ready to install our new motor assembly. A couple of things I want to point out. So I did some test fitting off camera, and the first thing I noticed was that this new bracket had really sharp corners right here. And so we took a grinder to both of these corners and smoothed them out so you can see the shiny part here. And the reason we did that is because these sharp corners that used to stick way out were colliding terribly with this bracket, which did not allow the motor to sit nice and flush with the OEM bracket up here. So we just smoothed those out, and now that looks a lot more like the original motor assembly. And so at this point, we're ready to get it up onto the truck and get it reassembled. So to start, we're going to plug in our first plug. And we'll slide in the red tab. Okay, and now we're going to set this assembly up onto those studs. There we go, and we can see it's sitting nice and flush with that bracket because we took those corners off. I also did put a little bit of anti-seize on all of these studs, just in case we ever need to take this back apart and replace the assembly again. So we left off by starting the 3 nuts on these main studs that hold the assembly onto the truck. So all 3 of those are now started. Everything is still loose though, so you can see the entire assembly still wiggles. After those 3 were started, I went ahead and plugged in the main wiring harness and opened the door of the truck, which extended the motor down. And the reason I did this is because I want to attach the running board onto the bracket before I get anything tightened down. So I want to get all of the bolts started, everything lined up before we start tightening down this main assembly. I also started these 2 bolts right here in the front that go through the truck's mounting bracket and into the motor assembly as well. So next up, we're going to go ahead and drop this running board onto our bracket, get our 2 bolts started from the bottom, and then all of our hardware will be started, and so we'll go back around and start tightening things up. With the 2 bolts into the running board and the running board secured, I'm ready to come back and tighten the 3 main studs that hold the assembly onto the truck. Next up, we're going to tighten these 2 front bracket bolts. On the front of the bracket, don't forget to push the push pin back in for the wire harness and reattach with 2 screws. I was able to find 2 screws that matched since we did break one of these screws removing the old bracket. So everything's nice and tight now. Wiring harness is secured. So the last step is to attach our wiring harness to this plastic shield. So we just push the push pin through. We also attach the push pin for the smaller wire onto that 3rd stud that you cannot see. And that should wrap up everything under the truck. All right guys, there we have it. New running board motor is installed, but now for the ultimate test. Is the barking seal gone? So far so good. Let's see if it goes back up. Look at that. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe.